We've spent quite a lot of time talking about the nature of divine interaction and this world, hashgacha pratis, reward and punishment in our normal regular life. But we didn't really get up to the second part of what I wanted to talk about when I introduced that mini series, which is the world to come, Moshiach Tchias HaMesim, and that whole aspect. So I thought I'd spend some time talking about that, and again looking at the differing views between the Rambam and the Mekubalim, in this case led by the Ramban, Nachmanides, and the Ramchal again. And I think it makes a little sense to just try and understand a little bit about that. I'll speak again, and please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask any questions if you want me to explore things further. So I was also asked to perhaps give some sources as to where these ideas are coming from. The view of the Rambam is expressed really twice in his Mishnah Torah. The first time is in the first time is in chapters 8 and 9 of Hilchos Teshuvah, and the second time is in Hilchos Melachim, chapters 11 and 12. Hilchos Melachim is near the end of the Rambam, it's Mishnah Torah, and Hilchos Teshuvah is quite near the beginning. He addresses it twice. Then the Rambam speaks about these as articles of faith in his Perush Mishnayos to Sanhedrin. In the Perush Mishnayos, in his commentary to the Mishnayos, he lists the 13 articles of faith in the most full manner, and that's also where he talks about the concept of Moshiach and Tchias HaMesim. Now, I'll go through this in more detail shortly, but right on the Rambam himself there in Hilchos Teshuvah, you see the controversy around his words arising. Because on the Rambam in Hilchos Teshuvah, the Ravad already comments and says this is terrible, what's he saying? The Kasef Mishnah, the Rabbi Yosef Cairo, who wrote a commentary on the Rambam, leaps to the Rambam's defense. And the truth is the Rambam himself leapt to his own defense because he was very disturbed by his critics. His critics took his words to mean that he didn't agree with Tchias HaMesim, even though the Rambam had listed Tchias HaMesim in his Mishnah, in his Perush Mishnayos, as one of the articles of faith. And the Rambam wrote a whole piece on Tchias HaMesim, which is known either as Igeres Tchias HaMesim or Mama Tchias HaMesim. So the Rambam wrote a mini work dedicated just to the topic of Tchias HaMesim. So this is where this is spoken about from the Rambam side. From the opponents of the Rambam side, I already mentioned the Ravad on the spot, who addresses this. The Ramchal, in all his works, or many, sorry, not all, but many of his works, speaks about this. He speaks about this in Derech Hashem, in the Mama HaIkrim, and in his Das Tevunus. And the Ramban wrote a whole topic on this in a mini work called Shah HaGemul. The Shah HaGemul was part of a larger work called Torah Ha'adam, the Torah of a human being. And the last section of this, the last chapter, is called Shah HaGemul, the gate of Gemul, means reward and punishment, and that's where he writes about Torah Ha'adam is where he compiles the halachas of death and burial, and Shah HaGemul he moves to theology and begins speaking about death, judgment, and Olam Haba, the afterlife. And these are the main sources that I've based myself on. I should mention that Ma'amad Tchias HaMesim is written fairly late in the Rambam's life. We know more about the Rambam as he gets older because, of course, he becomes more famous and things are more documented. And he wrote this when he was 56, so we know more detail about exactly when this was written than some of his earlier works, which took him longer to write and were written over many years. So those are the main sources for those interested in what I'm going to be speaking about today. And the Rambam's view on the matter is as follows. The sequence of events, according to the Rambam, is as follows. And this is a compilation of the various bits and pieces that he says over his differing works. I'm going to here assume that the Rambam was writing clearly what he meant. As with many works of the Rambam was always suspected of concealing what he meant in the Rambam is on the one hand incapable of incredible clarity. There's no writer who's as clear as the Rambam. When you read his Mishnah Torah, it's phenomenally clear. And yet the Rambam also wrote in his Moreh Nevuchim that he sometimes concealed his ideas with great depth. And the way he revealed them was by writing deliberate contradictions and other things of the sort. And therefore sometimes the Rambam is very hard to understand. And the Rambam found himself trapped by his own words, by not really being believed by his own critics. as to what he really meant. After the Rambam wrote Tchias HaMesim, his Maamar Tchias HaMesim, he wrote at length how I'm very upset to have been accused of denying Tchias HaMesim, and of course I believe in it, and he wrote it at great length. Most of his critics accepted that, but some of them, even after he wrote that, said, no, the Rambam doesn't really mean that, he's just writing this because he had to write it and so on. So I'm going to here assume, I'm not going to assume an esoteric reading of the Rambam. I'm going to take the Rambam in face value and just say what he says. Those of you who are interested in the various conspiracy theories around the Rambam can do your own research by looking at these sources and coming to your own conclusions. I'm just going to present the Rambam as he says it. Now, the Rambam, in his the compilation of what he says is as follows. After the normal course of day-to-day life as we know it, at some stage, a Jewish leader, a king, will arise who will achieve that which the prophets speak about as being the qualities of Mashiach, at which point we would assume that this king is, or know that this king is Mashiach. What will this Jewish leader do? They will bring the Jewish people back to the land of Israel, they will rebuild the Beis HaMikdash, and they will restore Jewish rights, freedom for us to get on and do what we want. They'll remove Shibud Malchius, the oppression of the nation, so that we can do that which we want. And in addition, they will bring peace to the world and prosperity to the world. And the Rambam explains that the various bits of language used which seem overtly miraculous, it's not the case. Olam kimin hago noeg, the world will carry on in its normal manner, but in a remarkable way. So there won't be the Chazal that say that cakes, gluskos, will grow on trees, simply mean that panasa, that food, prepared food, ready food, will be easily findable. Not that miraculously grapes will grow on trees. And similarly, on this example I've mentioned before, when we talk about the Gar Kavesin's Ave, that the lamb and the wolf will be able to dwell peacefully together, it means a metaphor that the nations of the world and the former aggressors will be able to get on peacefully. So this is the world of Mashiach, but the Rambam emphasizes again and again that this doesn't mean that things will suddenly become completely removed from normal life. Normal life will carry on. We'll have to keep Torah and mitzvahs because they are eternal, as the Rambam stresses again and again in his works. All it means is that we won't have the normal blocks to be able to get on and do things that matter. A lot of us need to spend a lot of our lives, this is its own topic that needs addressing, but we spend a lot of our lives needing to stress over earning our livelihoods and other such things, and they distract us sometimes from spiritual endeavor. Similarly, the persecution of the world against us, anti-Semitism and war and conflict, remove our ability to focus on what we're really meant to be doing, and Mashiach will remove any of these distractions so we can just get on the job and engage with genuine spiritual pursuits. So will go the world. Part of this normal world will be that Mashiach and all human beings will live and then die. That's the way of the world. So we're not going to have a miraculous eternal life. The Rambam says we'll live a long life, a longer life than previously, because there won't be any of the problems that cause us to die younger than we should. But nonetheless, eventually we will die. And adding to this, what he writes in Mishnah Torah, there will be a period of Tchias HaMesim, when we are reborn and we will live again, experience the time of Mashiach, but then die again. And when we talk about Olam Haba, the world to come, we mean in all instances the world post-death. Now, I want you to understand, because to the modern mind, we are so influenced by the thinking of the Rambam that many of us think of Olam Haba like that. And if you say to someone, what's Olam Haba? They'll say the world after death. The classic thinking, pre the Rambam writing, and in many respects, even to this day, the classic thinking is that Olam Haba refers to the world post-Tchias HaMesim, when we will be embodied. But the Rambam doesn't think that. The Rambam says, no, that's not what Olam Haba is. Olam Haba refers to the purely spiritual existence that we will have after death. When we die now, we go to Olam Haba. When we are reborn, we will temporarily live post-Tchias HaMesim in a messianic world, and then we will die again. But ultimately, all human beings will die and will live in a continued existence of sorts in the world of souls, in Olam HaNeshamas, in Olam Haba. And the Rambam writes at great length, this Olam Haba is completely non-physical. There's no physical existence, there's no sleeping, there's no eating, there's no drinking, there's no bodily functions at all, there's not yeshiva and amida, we can't stand and sit. because these are all physical attributes. It's a state of existence that's purely spiritual. So says the Rambam in Olam Haba. And the critics of the Rambam said, you've misunderstood the whole issue. Olam Haba refers to the world post Tchias HaMesim, and the whole point of being post Tchias HaMesim is that it is a physical existence of sorts, and therefore you're ending up conflicting with the idea of Tchias HaMesim. And the Rambam writes back to his critics and says, I know what you mean. Of course I believe in Tchias HaMesim. Tchias HaMesim is a physical rebirth, but I'm talking about Olam Haba, which is after death, after Tchias HaMesim, and therefore I don't understand what you want. So there's as the Kesef Mishnah already points out, somewhat there's a problem with semantics over here. The Rambam, when he says that there's no physical existence, is talking about a post-death life. And everyone would agree post-death there's no physical existence. The critics of the Rambam, who are talking about Olam Haba, refer to the post-Tchias HaMesim existence. And there is a physical existence agreed upon by everyone. Nonetheless, there is an essential argument here also, because the Rambam views Tchias HaMesim as a stepping stone, but ultimately the end goal is post-physical existence, post-death, a world of only neshama, soul existence, whereas the critics of the Rambam believe that Tchias HaMesim, which is a physical existence, will be the ultimate fate of humanity. So this is the very, very important background to the debate that goes on. Now again, taking the Rambam on face value, and I see no reason not to in this topic, the Rambam absolutely believes in Moshiach, absolutely believes in Tchias HaMesim. He lists these as Ikrim numbers 12 and 13 in his list of fundamentals of faith. But the Rambam believes that Tchias HaMesim will come to an end, after which, or the life after Tchias HaMesim will come to an end, after which there will be the end of physical existence, and we will cease to exist physically and only exist as souls, as spiritual beings. So this is the layout of the argument between the two schools of thought. So what are we meant to make of all of this? How are we meant to understand this? So in the thinking of the Mekubalim, well, there's really 2 or 3 things we need to talk about. The first one is, what is this state of non-physical existence according to the Rambam? And what does it mean? Why is it important? And secondly, in the thinking of the Rambam, what's the purpose of Tchias HaMesim? Why do we have this interval in which we are reborn again as physical bodies if it's anyway not going to last? Similarly, in the view of the Mekubalim, we need to understand what is the purpose of this Tchias HaMesim. Why should we be reborn as bodies? Tchias HaMesim seems an unnecessary addition onto the core understanding we have of life. We understand that we're here, we exist in the physical world to live, to make decisions, hopefully good ones, and then receive the consequences of our decisions, primarily in the world to come. We discussed that according to the Rambam, the consequence of our decisions in this world are only in as much as we get resources or lose resources based upon our choices. It's not really the world of rewards and punishment. We shouldn't expect this world to operate directly in a system of rewards and punishment, but after death, that's what happens. So I understand that there's this existence in this world, and then there's post-death existence when we get our rewards and punishment, and we need to understand the nature of this rewards and punishment, as we've already said. But both according to the Rambam and according to his critics, what's the point of this Tchias HaMesim? We already said the questions in the Rambam, but the questions according to the Mekubalim, why do we then need to come back? Why should we be born again in a physical body? And why should that be the true place of rewards and punishment?
Now, did you say the Mekubalim Tchias HaMesim is the final step, according to the Mekubalim?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
So we have an eternity of physical, in a physical body?
So they would appear to say, yes.
So we don't age?
So they would appear to say, yes. And I'm going to speak about that in a few moments, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to ask, if the Rambam regards this world as perfect, then how does he regard Limos HaMashiach? And how does he regard Tchias HaMesim? Is it better?
The Rambam doesn't regard this world as perfect. The Rambam says that this world is perfect as a preparation stage, given our state as human beings. The meaning of the word perfect is a difficult word. The Rambam believes that we human beings are less capable than angels of spiritual awareness. And the reason we're less capable of angels than angels is because we can only become spiritually aware via the interface of physical experiences. whereas the angels, for example, are cholim nivdolim, are intelligences removed from physicality, and they can directly understand spirituality. All the Rambam is saying is that for us who live in the physical world, this physical world operates in line with the spiritual conditions necessary for us to exist. Nonetheless, it's clear that in the current functioning of the world, we are distracted sometimes from our ability to engage in spirituality, and that's the purpose of Moshiach, as I'll explain in a few moments.
But when we get to Limos HaMashiach and life is less stressful, why is it less stressful? Why shouldn't it be less stressful in this world? Why should it be only in that world? Why we said with Bechira we needed the downsides in order to compensate for the upsides. If there's less stress and there's more peace in the world, then life is easier. Why would there be a system that's more easy just because it's Mashiach's time? If he's got a world that he thinks is perfect in the sense that there's a complete system. We're still a physical in the Limos HaMashiach, according to him. So
yes, that is correct. Nonetheless, the Rambam acknowledges there are things in our life which detract from our ability to get on with what we're really meant to be doing. Primarily in the thinking of the Rambam, the struggle to earn a living and Shibud Malchus, the persecution that we face, and the removal of those two issues, which is what will happen when Mashiach comes, will allow us to continue our spiritual journey without those distractions. The simplest understanding is, according to the Rambam at least, that Bechira will continue, free will choice will continue at that stage, but it will be a different level because it will leave open to us a different capacity to make choices. Let me try and explain further, David, and then I'll try and come back to. I hope what I say further will address a little bit more what you're asking. But I do want to say this phrase, "the world is perfect," it isn't one that can just be said in a black and white manner. It does its job in the current setting, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean everything is right in it. It doesn't mean it's the best possible circumstance according to the Rambam. We'll come back to that. So, in brief, what we've asked is both according to the Rambam and according to the Mekabalim, or the alternative view of the Rambam, which really was, to be fair, the mainstream view pre the Rambam, as questions by the Raivad, his criticism on the Rambam, so it's not just the Mekabalim here. What is the purpose of these two stages? So I think there's a fantastic insight in the view of the Mekabalim, which is one that's very, very important to understand. We human beings are physical beings. We are souls embodied, souls that exist inside bodies. Now we're often taught that from childhood and up, we're told the real you is the soul. The real you is the neshama. But this isn't really something that the Mekabalim would agree with. The real me is this combination and partnership of that which is more physical about me and that which is more spiritual about me. Indeed, we say this in davening when we talk about Elokai neshama shenasata bi tahurahi. The soul which you put in me is tahor, is pure. The soul that you put in me. So who's the me in which the soul was put? Clearly, I'm not synonymous with my soul. Now, exactly how the Mekabalim answer the question is I don't want to oversimplify because they talk about different layers of the soul and things like that, but certainly a more physical and attached to physical existence aspect of myself is the true me. I'm not just a soul. I'm a combination of a spiritual and physical dimension. And this is the reason why the Mekabalim understands that post-death, when my body ceases, this is merely a temporary stage. This is a purification process. Post the sin of Adam, my body is overly physical, overly corrosive. Post-death, when the body deteriorates, that's purified. It is then reborn in a partnership of body and soul. And at that point, the real me has come back to existence. And therefore, the Olam, the world of Tchias HaMeisim, that is the real Olam Haba. That's the real world to come. And that's the real world of Schar, of reward and punishment. Because true reward and punishment has to be achieved when I'm embodied, when I'm in a physical body. Why does it have to be when I'm in a physical body? Because I'm not just a spiritual being. I'm a physical and spiritual being. And therefore, both aspects of myself need to receive the rewards and punishment that they do. So Tchias HaMeisim is a phenomenal idea. Tchias HaMeisim being listed as one of the 13 principles of faith, in a sense, is the point at which the David, I'm muting you here. I've just muted everyone for the sake of clarity, unless you want to ask questions. If you want to ask something, then unmute yourself. But
Sorry, I wanted to ask whether you were referring to Gilgul Neshomas here.
Okay, no, I'm not going to go into Gilgulim. I'm happy to mention them, and I'll just make a note of this. But I'm not going to address it at length.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, my connection is weak. That's why I'm muting everyone. I'm getting interference for some reason. Okay, so if one asks oneself where in the principles of faith is the idea that Judaism doesn't believe in removing ourselves from physicality, but it believes in engaging with physicality because we are embodied beings, not to view ourselves as just souls, but to realize we need to elevate even the physical. According to the Kabbalists, the answer would be Tchias HaMesim. That's the principle of faith, which expresses this most profound idea of our opposition to what we view as a distorted view of spirituality, that spirituality can mean removal from physical existence. No, quite the contrary. True spirituality is existing as physical beings, and within that, elevating spiritual existence. And that's the concept of Tchias HaMesim. That's the Ikka of Tchias HaMesim, that we are the true world of reward and punishment is when we exist both as bodies and souls together.
So could I just ask, so how do we take the fact that we look at Moshe Rabbeinu when he went on Har Sinai, not needing food because he'd elevated himself to a level where his body was irrelevant?
Yeah. There are 2 points to say about this. The first is even Moshe Rabbeinu, from what we understand, that's only a temporary condition. It's not a permanent condition. It's for the 40 days and 40 nights. Moshe Rabbeinu, in some respects, removed himself from physical existence more than any other human being did, as referenced by the story of the Lashon Hara, the discussion that Aaron and Miriam had about Moshe, in which they critiqued his lifestyle. Part of that may have been, according to some ways of reading the Pesukim, the fact that he remained single, celibate, not married, or not engaged in marital life with his wife. And that's not that an ideal. It can happen, but it's not an ideal. Nonetheless, in other respects, it would appear that Moshe did revert somewhat to a physical existence. If Moshe remains completely removed from physical existence, then he's the one exception to the rule. This is the uniqueness of Moshe. He's the only person in human existence who's capable of being angel-like. In which case, Moshe was an angel of sorts. He was only semi-human. He was semi-angelic. And I use this language deliberately because there is language in the Zohar and other sources which refer to Moshe as being somewhat angel-like in quality. In fact, Moshe is referred to, even by the Rambam often, as the shliach, the messenger. Now, shliach is, of course, synonymous with the word malach. A malach is a messenger. It's just another word for a messenger. In which case, maybe Moshe's the whole state of Moshe's existence has been superseded by his role as a messenger, in which case he ceased to have a normal physical existence.
Don't we find also Choni HaMagil, who was it Choni HaMagil who slept for 100 years?
70 years, yes.
20 years. So how did he survive during that without eating or drinking?
Again, I understood the question that was asked about Moshe not to be referring to miraculous existence. Now, whether one understands Choni HaMagel's story to be literal or metaphorical is another question. If it's literal, then it's a miraculous experience. It's not a normal experience. The question here isn't about miracles. That's another discussion, how miracles work. The question is, what's the ideal of what a human being is meant to be? So I understood the question from Moshe Rabbeinu about the 40 days wasn't asking how he could survive without eating. It's asking, surely we hold Moshe up as a paradigm of what a human being is meant to be. And in this story, we see that Moshe ceased to have physical functions. To which the answer is either this was a temporary condition, or perhaps Moshe is an exception. There's a Meshech Chochma, Remeas Simcha HaKohen of Dvinsk, who I often mention, has a very long essay on exactly this topic, as to why Moshe, if one understands that Moshe ceased to be like other human beings, why he ceased to be like other human beings. He says this was a necessary condition for being the agent of delivery of the Torah. So, for example, he argues that Moshe has to be removed from Bechira, from the option of free will, because were he to have had free will, how can we rely on his transmission of the Torah? True, maybe he was the great Moshe at the time of Matan Torah, but then maybe afterwards something went wrong and he made bad decisions and he chose to distort the message he was given and so on. So Moshe Rabbeinu is somewhat of an exception, perhaps, in this, but in that respect, he's not a role model of what a human, normally speaking, is. He's the exception to the rule, if one understands that Moshe remains removed from any physical existence. So this is the view of the Kabbalists, and to be fair, not even the Kabbalists, the thinkers pre the Rambam. Olam Haba is the world of rewards and punishment, which refers to the post-Chiyas HaMesim world when we are embodied. I just want to link this to something else we've spoken about in the Rambam, because just to make connections over here, it's not coincidence, therefore, that you have this argument, because the Rambam is the closest thinker in Jewish tradition who does believe in some sort of monastic ideal. Again, let's just remember the Rambam in context. The Kabbalists and the non-Rambam thinkers believe that angels are lower than human beings, because true spirituality is found in the fact that we make choices, that we are physical beings that are nonetheless capable of spiritual awareness. That's what real spirituality is, as opposed to the angels, which are robotic-like beings created with awareness of God. Big deal, that's not spirituality. The Rambam says the opposite. The Rambam says that it's better angelic level of existence is the higher awareness of God. Us existing in physical bodies is a weakness, is a limitation. The Rambam, again, point number one. Point number two, the Rambam sees the purpose of mitzvahs, physical actions, as channeling and molding our thinking process, because true spirituality is found in how we think, not just what we do. What we do is important because it sets the platform. It's an essential platform for how we think. Again, the Rambam's not negating the importance of mitzvahs. They're absolutely essential. The idea that you can somehow become an abstract philosophical thinker in a Torah way without living it in a real way is, of course, not possible. But in truth, the real ideal is the philosophical contemplation that we achieve, the awareness of God and spirituality that we get to intellectually. So it's the second Rambam in which, again, you see the Rambam negating or minimizing the importance of physical existence. Our physical existence is a barrier, is a distraction. Sadly, tragically, we're not secholim and ivdolim. We're not intellectual beings removed from physical existence. We find ourselves in physical existence. Why did God create us like that? We can't say. All we can say is kach olah b'ritzonu. So he wanted. He wanted there to be beings that could be more directly aware of spirituality, angels and the like, and beings that can only become aware of spirituality through the interface of our physical existence. But this is no ideal. The Rambam sees sees physical needs and physical expressions as somewhat of a shame in human beings, as somewhat of a source of embarrassment in humans. It's the lower part of ourselves. But what can we do? Again, this is our reality. Rabbi Avraham ben Rambam, the son of the Rambam, Rabbi Avraham, is a very great figure, and is largely assumed to reflect the view of his great father. In his lifetime, incidentally, he was seen as, he's less famous now, but in his lifetime he was seen as a successor of his father in a remarkable way. If you look at the teshuvos that we have, many of them found through the Cairo Geniza and elsewhere, you see how he was addressed by his contemporaries in terms of absolute awe. So Rabbi Avraham ben Rambam, a remarkable son of a great man, he wrote a ethical work of almost like a practical application in Avodas Hashem of the very philosophical ideas of his father. So Moreh Nevuchim is a very abstract work. All of the Rambam's ideas are very difficult to relate to. He wrote a practical handbook in the sense of how to live. And this practical handbook is called Sefer HaMaspik L'Ovdei Hashem. Unfortunately, lots of it has been lost, and we've only got a few sections of it that have remained. The work was found in the Sassoon Library and translated from the Arabic into the Hebrew by Rabbi Dr. Wiesenberg, who many of you will remember. Now, in that work, the son of the Rambam writes about the concept of Chassidus, of extra righteousness. He was also known sometimes as Ram HaChassid. He was a Chassid. He was not a Chassid in the modern meaning of the word, but he practiced Chassidut, elevated spirituality. And it's very clear from his writings that what he means by that is abstinence of sorts. And he writes there about Chassid HaRishon, Chassid HaSheni, Chassid HaShlishi, 3 levels of Chassidus, and he describes what their Shabbos looks like. And the Chassid HaShlishi, the highest level, is someone who fasts on Shabbos. He spends the whole of Shabbos not eating, not drinking, not associating with anyone, but engaged in contemplation. very different view to halacha and maisa, to how in practice we understand these things. No one paskins. We don't paskin like the Rambam in this area, but the Rambam sees the body and physical existence somewhat as a negative aspect of human existence. What keeps the Rambam and his opponents as one religion, one faith, is that even the Rambam in practice does not see a monastic or abstinent lifestyle as an ideal. The difference is in perspective. The Rambam says that it's sad and tragic. It's a pity. It's a diminution of human beings that we're physical. But that's the way it is. Hashem kach ola britzo. Maybe I said this over strongly. I shouldn't have said sad and tragic. There's a diminution of human being that we can only see God through our physical existence, our physical interface. Angels, the abstract intelligences that can perceive God even without physical existence. However, we are physical beings. So we can't be in denial of that. If we try and engage in a monastic lifestyle in which we're removed completely from physicality, we're revolting against our nature, and that's not going to work. We're not going to achieve anything. We'll be drawn and sucked back into physicality just because we're not designed to operate that way. So everyone agrees halacha l'maisa, in practical halacha. Now the most is we can dip our toes into this sort of thing. But in practical halacha, everyone agrees that we need to engage with a physical life. And therefore, in practice, it's true to say that in Judaism, we believe we need to engage in physical life and through that find spirituality. And the difference is in perspective. Is this an ideal and we're higher than angels? Or is this a weakness and we're lower than angels, but so God created us? Why do I bring this discussion up here? Just simply to make the connections between this, which we've spoken about before, and what we're speaking about now. This is why the Rambam doesn't see the world of Tchias HaMesim as the ideal. It's merely a stopping post. It's a temporary stage. Because in truth, the ideal for us is to cease to be physical beings and become just the world of souls, the world of consciousness, which is what we mean by Olam Haba. So the machlokus between the Rambam and his critics as to whether Olam Haba refers to the post-Tchias HaMesim world when we are embodied as physical creatures, or whether it refers to post-death when we're just souls, is consistent with the general pattern of machlokus between the Rambam and his opponents as to whether bodily removed contemplation is the ideal, or whether engagement with physical performance of mitzvahs is the higher level. So this is how these two discussions link to each other. Now, I want to make one more point about the view of the Kabbalists before we look more carefully at the view of the Rambam. Actually, I'll just pause there if there are any comments to make about this, and then I'll go on to the next.
You're probably going to talk about this, but can you tell us under the Kabbalists what Tchias HaMesim looks like? If it's eternity and in human form, what age we come back at? Is there no illness, presumably? Is there Bechira? Are we robots? There's no reward and punishment, presumably. What are we going to do for eternity? We're going to learn for eternity, according to the Kabbalists. Do you come back with your wife, if I can ask that? Are you together like you were before? And where is the family? Are your children with you? I mean, I just can't understand for eternity what that's going to be.
Okay, I will address that. Any other? Okay, so Charles just set out an extensive agenda of what we need to think about if we talk about the existence post Tchias HaMesim. I don't know all the answers to those questions, but I will try and give a mindset that I think will give some answers to these questions. And this is going to be essential when we look later at the view of the Rambam. When a person comes back post Tchias HaMesim, what age do they come back? Do they come back just as they were pre-death? But if they come back the way they were a moment before death, then death will reoccur because there was a reason they died, because their body had broken down sufficiently such that it couldn't survive. So what age of physical existence do they come back with? More than that, what exactly is the nature of this physical existence? The Kabbalists see this as the Olam Haba, which means to say it's the world of reward. So if it's the world of reward, is it eternal existence of receiving reward? Does that mean there's no free will at that point? Presumably not. That's the whole point. Because the whole point is this is the world of reward post the struggle of existence. And what does eternity look like? Going on and on and on and on and on. How does that work? So here we get to something alluded to already by the Kesef Mishnah in his commentary on the Rambam, and also by the Ramban in Shah HaGamul, that even though the Kabbalists speak about returning in physical form, there's still something conceptual or spiritual in that state of existence. And one of the ways of understanding this, this paradox is as follows. What point do we come back in existence? What part of us is reborn? Which age of us is reborn? And the answer is every single age of us. Every single moment of us is reborn. Well, one way of looking at life is that every second that we live, a new moment of life is brought into existence, but a moment of life previous to that has been lost, has died. We are dying every second because that second is no longer. And all of us is reborn in Tchias HaMesim. This is a mystical concept. All of us are reborn in Tchias HaMesim according to the thinking of the Mukabalim. All of us comes back alive. So which part of me comes back alive? The part of me now, speaking to you, but also the part of me 20 years ago, who may be a very different person. And sometimes in our lives, we struggle to connect those different parts of ourselves. And sometimes things that happened to us 20 years ago, or mistakes maybe that we made 20 years ago, which perhaps we've never really done teshuvah on. Teshuvah, of course, can change the past, but perhaps we've never done teshuvah on, but no longer loom large in our sense of self because they're long forgotten, they're just distant memories, or maybe not even remembered at all. But they're there. They're part of our existence. They're part of our consciousness. They're part of what we did. And therefore, all these moments are reborn. And if we think that as we exist now, at this particular moment in time, on the 3rd of May at 9:39 in 2020, we think we're complicated beings, we're aware that there's tensions between ourselves and aspects of ourselves that aren't completely integrated. We're physical beings, we're emotional beings, we're intellectual beings, we're spiritual beings. That's already 4 parts of ourselves that need to talk to each other and work together. And then within each one of them, there can be contradictions. Sometimes we can feel conflicting emotions or conflicting ideas or conflicting spiritual states of being within each aspect of ourselves. Then throw into the mix, not just how we are at any one particular second, when we're a complicated enough bundle of different aspects, but throw into the mix how we are every single second of existence. And therefore, how does the emotional, spiritual, intellectual, and physical state of me 25 years ago integrate with how I am now? But the truth is, a lived life, a well-lived life, needs to integrate all of that. We need to ensure that we are in sync in every aspect of ourselves, as we currently are, and in truth, as we ever have been, which is again, part of the imperative of Teshuvah. That means you look on what we've done and try and sort it out. Now again, I know this is a challenging model to think about, and this isn't an attempt to make what's already a challenging life, to live a good life yet harder. But in the thinking of the Kabbalah, this is what we mean when we talk about Tchias HaMesim. We mean every moment of ourselves coming back to life, every part of ourselves that has died, every moment and second by second by second that is dying and has died, and all of that is integrated into a whole. And when that holistic sense of a human being is reborn, then we enter into Olam Haba, and that's the world of reward and punishment. Now, the nature of this reward and punishment we've discussed a little bit, and we'll discuss again. But on some level, it's an existence in which there's a clarity of true spirituality, and therefore an awareness of the consequence of the mistakes that we've made, and an awareness of the incredible achievements of that which we've done good. And therefore, Olam Haba will be the world of reward and punishment. But what should become clear to us at this point is that even though this is spoken about as a physical existence, it's a very different physical existence to the one we currently know now. It's a sense of what we are holistically in a way that we're incapable of conceiving now when we live trapped in time. Because we can only live currently second by second by second. But the point of Olam Haba is that it's a holistic living which isn't second by second, but it's the whole span and the whole spectrum of all the moments that make up our life. And therefore, I'm undercutting, in a sense, part of your question, Charles. Because the question of what we mean by living for eternity can mean one of 2 things. Eternity can mean, Aristotle already pointed this out, infinity can mean 2 things. It can mean on and on and on and on and on, or it can mean above time. It can mean removed from time. And what we're describing here in Olam Haba is not a normal sense of self or normal sense of time in the way that we typically mean it. Now, that's one part of an answer to your question. The other part of an answer to your question is, I'm dividing the question into 3 parts. One is, what's the nature of this physical existence? And I've said something about that. The second thing is, what's the nature of our interaction with our near and dear, our family, our husbands, our wives, our parents, and our friends, and so on and so forth. And the third part of this question is, what's the nature of change that takes place? first part I've already explained. It's true that the Kabbalists talk about a physical existence. Nonetheless, as we've already explained, it's a very different sort of physical existence, and one which doesn't relate to time in the way that we used to. What is our connection to others? Again, in line with the reality of Olam HaEmes, the world of truth. In other words, the true nature of our connection to others. To the degree that we are truly connected to others, meaning to say that our relation to them isn't just predicated on untruths, on selfishness, on self-interest, on pleasure seeking and the like, but is a genuine commitment of emes, of truth, a commitment of love, and the mystery of love which needs unpicking, in which caring and giving to someone else with commitment is also the greatest pleasure we can receive. And there's nothing wrong. This isn't meant to say if you love someone because that's a source of pleasure and fulfillment. Of course it's meant to be, but it's a source of pleasure and fulfillment which isn't selfish, but is based on givingness and care and genuine love. Then that exists also in the world to come, because they are part of our spiritual existence. Our spirituality is in a web, contextualized within a web of connections. And we have an impact on others, our Talmidim, our students, our Rebbes, our teachers, the people our children, our parents, those that we interact with, those that we positively benefit, those that we give to. And this web of existence remains. The nature of the relationship, again, is different. It's hard to talk about in any normal terms, because if we ask ourselves, will I be able to have a conversation with them? Well, we don't really know what it means to exist in the whole sum totality of my life, in which every second of my existence is present. But within the limit of being able to talk about this, then yes, those connections remain. Finally, you asked about the state of change and progress in this world. According to the Kabbalists, this is a world of Olam Haba, it's a world of Schar, and therefore there won't be the normal system of Bechira taking place. Nonetheless, and this we also mentioned briefly, they do view this as non-static. There is motion and change in this existence. We don't believe in the concept of eternal damnation. So those, I already mentioned this awesome and almost frightening perspective of the recreation of human existence that occurs, in which every moment of our life is reborn, including those decisions that we made 20 years ago that we can barely remember, which may have been right or may have been wrong, the positives in them and the negatives in them. And all of that needs to be integrated in a whole. But that integration occurs. There's a process that occurs. And to the degree that we are still physicalized and drawn after physicality, we're still able to progress and change. And therefore, a process occurs which ultimately arrives at reward for all of us. How does this change occur? That's going to be the topic of where we start off next week. But change occurs also there. And I will finish that the Ramchal, when he speaks about these ideas, says, Zuna chomosenu ba'onyenu. This is our comfort in our affliction, that what can be seen as a very frightening model, and that there is a responsibility in this model, nonetheless is also one that has a comfort in it. We will all be okay in the end, but we need to discuss next week how that happens. So,
can I ask a question?
Yes, yeah, I can hear you, Deborah.
I just it's so complicated this week. I don't really understand a lot of what's being said, but one of the things that I just wanted to ask with relation to Charles's question and your response is that Kabbalistically, the belief of that you come back as a soul to do your tikkun. So really, what you're saying is that when you do come back, ultimately, you're coming back, if you believe that, through many lifetimes and many experiences. What's your take on that?
Okay, all I've spoken about now is coming back through your one lifetime, which is complicated enough as it is, because in one's 120 years on Earth, that's made up of many hundreds of millions of moments of existence, and each of those moments of existence, we're complicated beings. We exist spiritually and physically and emotionally and intellectually and so on and so forth. If one wants to add into that the mix of Gilgal and reincarnation and coming back for another life, then one simply extends the issue. So it's no longer 120 years, it's 240 years or 360 years and so on and so forth. But in principle, it's the same idea. It doesn't change the core concept. Now, whether Gilgal does happen or doesn't happen and how it works is beyond the remit of this topic. But in principle, it doesn't change the dynamics that we're discussing today. I'm going to stop there because I'm aiming for 45 minutes. And what I will simply say is that I'm aware that these are complicated ideas. We're going to revisit them again and again over the next few weeks as we try and address these issues. Also, there are recordings available. One of the advantages of Zoom is it's finally shoved me into the 21st century, and I'm recording this on the cloud, wherever the cloud is, I'm not quite sure, via Zoom. So there will be recordings that we'll put up on YouTube, on the Schulz YouTube channel, if people want to watch this again, if they think that will be helpful. So I'm going to stop there. I've just got a question asked me privately via chat. Okay, someone asked here in the chat, given the fact that ultimately we cannot know whose opinion is right, why did these people spend so much time on the subject? What practical difference does it make? I hope that you will see that it does make a practical difference, and I hope that you will see that this is not just abstract. First of all, because each of the models is interesting. There's not an infinite number of models out there explaining what Olam Haba is. We're discussing 2. And secondly, because some of them do link to how life works and how we're meant to conceive what it means to be a human being. I've already explained, for example, in the Rambam, how the thought of the Rambam as to what a human being is very different to the thought of the Mekabalim, and this affects what we see as true spirituality. But again, I hope some of these things will become clear over the weeks that follow. And in the meantime, I wish you all a good morning. I wish you well. I look forward to seeing you next Sunday.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Zobin.
Oh, very interesting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.